my video here. Hi everyone. I don't know if you guys missed that introduction. That's okay. That was my boyfriend introducing myself. He didn't want to be on video, but he said he would do the announcement. So we wanted to try something fun. So you guys kind of got a little backstage action a little bit here today. But thank you guys for joining. If you're just joining me, let me know you're here. Comment wherever you're coming from, comment below and let us know. Say hi, say hello. I want to know that you are on and watching tonight. I hope you are joining us because we're going to talk about a very, I think, a good topic, but I think they're always good topics. But something that I think can be very relevant to those that are training for a marathon. So if you're training for a fall or half marathon, then you may be getting close to either that taper phase or you might be getting close to that week out from your marathon. So if that is you and you're a plant-based runner, then you'll want to tune in tonight. If you are just joining me and you're new here, my name is Kayla. Hopefully you saw or heard that introduction, but I am an online plant-based dietitian, nutrition, and run coach. And I know some of you have been following me for a while, so if you are here, let me know. And thank you guys so much for being here. Hi, joining in from Georgia. Oh, I didn't mention this as well, but I do go live using StreamYard, so if you are on Facebook, just make sure to click the link above me. And that should be able to allow your name to show up. So just for example, I can't see who it is, but if that's the case as well, you can either, as I said, click that link above or just type in the comments your name and where you're from. So we got someone from Georgia here. Hello. I'm 12 days out from the main marathon. Awesome. Oh, I bet it's going to be beautiful in Maine. Awesome. Yes, so this is very relevant for you if you are 12 days out from your marathon. Hopefully you could take some really good tips from this because you should be probably tapering. So awesome. This is Becca from Georgia. Awesome. Hey, Becca, thank you for joining tonight. So we are going to talk about how to fuel during the week of taper and the week of your marathon. So what does that look like? What does your fueling plan look like? How is this different, right? There's so many questions that I get about this. And there's very general kind of guidelines that I want to share to you that I think will be really helpful. So number one, eat the same meals a day. So don't really restrict. It's not the time to go on a juice cleanse, something that you still want to make sure you are eating the same amount of the same meals a day and meal snacks a day. You may if you're not as hungry, it's okay if you're not eating as much, but you may also have the other effect of your hunger being even more, even if you're not running as much. And don't freak out about that. That's completely normal. What I suggest is to listen that hunger and eat when you're hungry. Don't worry if you do gain some weight, which is possible but doesn't usually happen. I don't usually see that, so I don't think that's should be a very big worry, because most important thing is you want to be fueled for that race. So making sure you're eating the same meals a day and listening to that hunger and just eating when you're hungry. That is very important. Just listen to the hunger. Don't ignore those hunger cues. This is a time where you want to be fueling your body and making sure you're preparing your body to run, especially if you're running a marathon, to run 26.2 miles. Also, you may want to start increasing your intake of carbohydrates. Now, this is something that I actually don't think we have to really change much if you are already plant-based, because especially if you're whole food plant-based, then you are mostly eating plant-based food or carbohydrates already. So that week out from the marathon, that's going to be when you're going to want to really focus on eating more carbohydrates. But to me, as a plant-based runner, your focus should just be making sure you get those starchy vegetables and those grains. Making sure you're getting the vegetables. If you're counting exchanges, make sure you're getting the number of changes that you should be getting. That kind of thing. Just making sure you have, eating well balanced meals. Hopefully, you're already doing that. Hopefully, you're already in that routine of doing that. But now is the time to just be very more, I guess, a little bit more diligent and just making sure you're fueling properly. Um, and then also making sure you're adequately hydrating. So this is also very important. You don't want to be, dehydrated going into your race. Yes, you can drink a lot of water right before, but that cannot be so good if it could cause you to need to use the bathroom and not the right times, or things like that. You don't want to run into those kind of issues, so it's good to start adequately hydrating the week of your marathon, but at least 3 days out. So nutrition and hydration, that is where it's going to play more into a role. If you're not eating the best that week, it's not going to kill your marathon. But usually, really, just those 3 days out that's the most, I guess, important to really kind of just hone in on nutrition within those 3 days. What else? Let's see. So eat the same meals a day, as I said. Listen to your hunger and eat when you're feeling hungry. Don't ignore those hunger cues. So make sure to just honor that hunger. And then, be aware of and try to, increase the intake of starchy vegetables and grains. Just don't be afraid to eat those foods more often, because we're in this diet culture. We're afraid to eat those foods as much, and maybe we're afraid to gain weight. But when it comes to performance, carbohydrates are what are going to serve you the best. And that is, one of the reasons why plant-based nutrition works so well for us as runners and athletes, is because it's so heavy in carbohydrates. So if you are following like a general, plant-based diet, most likely you are eating 70% of your total calories are coming from carbohydrates. And that's actually how much you want to be coming from carbohydrates that week leading up to that marathon. So as I said, there's really not that much you need to change. It's just making sure you're focused on getting those foods in, eating those foods, honoring your hunger, and eating around the same type of meals a day. So with that, is there any questions? That just didn't really take me too long to kind of go through that. So does anyone have any questions on, during the taper or week of that marathon, which kind of ties into, I guess, both. Normally a taper it could be 3 weeks, could be 2 weeks. But you guys get the drift. See what else. Yeah, any other questions? I don't think I got any questions from the group. At least I didn't see anything. Oh, yay! I have a question. We do have a question. Do you have a sample breakfast, lunch, dinner meal? Yes, absolutely. I have lots of sample ideas for breakfast, lunch, and dinner that I can certainly give you. Are you looking for something in general or something specifically for that week of your marathon or during that taper? Let me know, but I do certainly have, ideas of what you could have. Lots and lots of ideas and kind of a sample breakdown. That you could follow. Your needs, everyone's needs is independent, and it depends on you. But I do have some sample ideas. Some ideas that I have, just since this is something that I was just working on with a client. Most common breakfast foods are either like Ezekiel muffin, a smoothie, overnight oats, tofu scramble. Those are very common breakfast foods that people will have. I try to also get people to think out of the box. A little bit if you're not much of a breakfast food eater, like having, sweet potatoes and black beans. That can be a breakfast. It doesn't necessarily have to be breakfast foods. Lunch, I think salads, wraps, grain bowls, those work really well for lunch. I do just always encourage to get, grain, plant-based protein, or your bean, legumes, and a vegetable and grain in there. So I always encourage just to get, try when you're creating meals, get those foods in, because that is what's going to give you be calorie dense, but also nutrient dense as well. So we want both. We want to make sure we're meeting our calorie and our total energy intake needs for performance and for training, as well as get those nutrients, because that's what's going to also help us as well. Dinner. Oh, there's so many dinner ideas. I've been doing a lot of kind of more hearty more hearty meals since it is fall. But also knowing my race, is coming up as well. Like recently this week I did a lentil, potatoes, and carrot kind of stew, like in my crock pot. So it kind of remind me of like kind of a pot roast. I don't know if anyone ever had pot roast when you were a kid, but that was kind of one of the meals that I remember I really liked, because I really liked the potatoes, with the flavor of it, as well as cooked carrots. I used to actually only like cooked carrots and not raw carrots. But anyways, it kind of reminds you of that. So I try to make meals that kind of remind me of, the time of year, what kind of foods I used to have, and try to make that into a vegan or plant-based version, which is can be really fun sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't come out so well, sometimes it does. But soups are really great this time of year. Obviously, you want to have more than just soup. You want to make sure to add a salad, add your plant-based protein, or add beans, or, healthy fats, or, sunflower seeds, to add a little bit more to it to make it more calorie dense and fill you up. Obviously, you don't want to just crunch on lettuce to fill you up. That's probably not enough. I always encourage making sure to get those plant-based proteins and those healthy fats. Easiest way to meet those energy needs. So yeah, but I can also, I think that's Becca. I can also send you a sample plan, 1-day plan, or meal ideas. So let's see. Anyone have any other questions? I'm not sure if anybody else is on tonight, but that's okay. Anything else? So that's how to taper, and that's what to really focus on the week of. And there's really not too much else going on this week. I will post this on the podcast. I know some people have been tuning in that way, which is really cool. So I'll be continuing to put these episodes, our lives on the podcast as well. So if you guys haven't checked out my podcast, check it out. It's a plant-based performance, plant-based performance podcast. You can find it on Spotify, Google, iTunes, all of that. Another question. Awesome. Thank you, Becca. As for hydration, do you think water is sufficient, or do you suggest electrolyte drinks? I do suggest electrolyte drinks for the marathon. So this specifically for the marathon. So for anything that you exercise or run for over an hour, you want to include electrolytes. So it's not just if it's hot out, it doesn't really depend on the temperature as much. It depends on how long you're out there. So most people that run a marathon, it's going to take 3 or more hours. So that means you're going to want to take some electrolytes. So some plant-based electrolytes that I recommend there's Tailwind, Scratch, Noon. Those are all plant-based. Those are all electrolytes that you can use. Now, some electrolytes you do want to be careful of, if you're concerned about the sugar. But something to consider too is that is what your body needs. So if you're somebody that's like, oh, I don't want to eat this sugar, you can make an electrolyte drink yourself. So you can do like a homemade electrolyte drink, or you could find one and just make sure that it doesn't have, any try to see if you can find something without any added sugars, but most of them you'll find they do. And again, it's because that's what we need. So during the run, usually simple carbohydrates, simple sugar is what we need to fuel. Also with fueling a little bit as well. So you need the electrolytes, but also during you should also have your gels. Dates also work really well for marathons. You probably don't want to get too much into trying different foods. Yes, during ultras, it's very popular to try the different foods, but during the marathon, it's kind of quick, it's kind of fast. So you're probably not going to want to really use much food, but we'll talk about that. I think we may talk about that a little bit next time or another video. I'll talk more about nutrition for fueling during. But in general, yes, for hydration, definitely, drink electrolytes. Water isn't just sufficient. You do want to try to include those electrolytes. Recommendations of how much to drink. I actually just went over this as well with a client. It's very dependent. But the general recommendation that I have found from ACEism, ACSM, and from other sports dietitians is about 5 to 12 ounces every 15 to 20 minutes. And what I usually recommend is for people to just sip on it during. So figure out how much you need of total. And if you're going on a long run, you have a hydration pack, and just take that with you and then figure out, okay, this is how many ounces that I need in total. So fill that up with how many ounces you think you'll need in your pack. And then that way you can just sip on it, and hopefully you can kind of, as you practice, you'll get into a way of, finishing it. Obviously, if it's more hot out, you may be drinking a little bit more and that kind of thing. But that's the general recommendation. If you want to specifically figure out how much exactly you need, then you should do a sweat test. I believe I've talked about this before. So you go back to that video. If you don't know what a sweat test is, I can totally give you some recommendations or some resources to kind of look that up. You could also just Google like what a sweat test is, but I can definitely send you some resources if you want to do that, because that is probably the best way, and that's what I usually do with clients as well. Is I just work with them to be able to figure out exactly how much fluid they need, how much fluid they're losing. This is going to be it could change as well based on the weather. I know for me, like my marathon, I've been training in Florida, but my marathon is New York. The weather is going to be very different. It's probably going to be much cooler and less humid. So my nutrition needs are probably going to change a little bit. So for me, that could be a little bit hard to kind of estimate what that's going to be when I actually run the race. So my actual fluid needs will be, because unfortunately, it's kind of hard to estimate or kind of figure out, because obviously my sweat rate is probably going to be a lot higher since I'm running and training in hot and humid weather. And hopefully it's not like that in New York. But hopefully I know that was kind of a long answer, but I wanted to explain a little bit more about that, because I know that's something people struggle with a lot, with how much to drink and when it comes to hydration. And another thing with hydration as well that I usually recommend, and especially I guess, I know it's kind of cooler now, so hopefully, and you may be tapering, so you may not really be going on those long runs as much right now if you are in that tapering phase. But usually what I recommend is taking your electrolytes in your hydration pack and taking a bottle of water. So that way you can kind of go off and on. If your electrolytes are a little bit sweet, that can help. And it's also good to have water with you, because if it's warm, you can splash a little water on your face and your head a little bit. At least I ran into that problem where I was like, I got warm and I couldn't really cool my body down. So realized, well, why don't I just, carry a water bottle with me? But that is just what I recommend. I know not everybody does that. But that's just what I suggest. But what works for you, of course, is, what works for you, and you have to figure out what works for you. So it's really all about experimentation, and hopefully But hopefully at this point you have done the kind of practice during your long run. So kind of figured out that fueling and hydration plan, and that may look a little bit different for your race. You may not be taking your hydration pack during that race, but you should be kind of thinking about that, thinking about, okay, what works for me during my long runs? What can I do? What is the plan going into the actual race? And those are things that I even go over with my run coach, and we go through it, a couple of days before, and we talk about, okay, what is the plan? How much are we going to, get in, fuel with, hydrate, and all of that? That is all part of the plan. So it's really helpful to have someone as well to just go over that, to just go over that plan with you and have that support. It really is really helpful, because I know it can be super confusing, and sometimes you're just like, oh, I'm just gonna try this, see how it goes. And sometimes that works as well. It's just experimenting and just figuring out what works. And as you become a seasoned runner and run more marathons, you kind of figure out what works best for you. So that is what I would recommend and suggest. So thank you guys for joining. Again, check out the podcast episode as well. If you don't already follow and like us on the Plant-Based Performance podcast. Leave a review so more people can find us. I also do these live videos, and on these live videos, I go live every Tuesday at 7 o'clock Eastern. You can find us here as well as on Facebook, as well as on YouTube. And then also the podcast episode is released every Wednesday at 4 o'clock Eastern. So if you guys want to check out the podcast, that's when you'll see a new podcast. So thank you guys so much for joining. If you guys have any questions, as always, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Just DM me. You can also email me. I also have a good fueling guide that goes along with the information that I shared today. So I'll also post that in the Facebook group under this video, so you guys have that as well. And if you want me to send you that individually, just reach out to me and I'll make sure you have it as well. You're welcome, and thank you for joining. Have a wonderful week. Bye.